Welcome back. Today we're going to be talking about Michigan. The Michigan, also known as the Great Lakes State. So, if you're unfamiliar with Michigan, it's located in the Great Lakes region of the United States. Let's go. Okay. So Michigan's there in the red. Some starting facts. We've got statehood January 26th, 1837. It was the 26th state admitted to the Union. The capital of Michigan is Lansing. Population 10 million, 10th in overall population. It covers an area of 99,100 or 716 miles squared, which is roughly 250,493 kilometers squared, making it the 11th largest state. The largest cities in Michigan, the four largest anyways, because I always go with four. We have Detroit, Grand Rapids, Warren, and Sterling Heights. Interesting thing that I know about Grand Rapids, it's recommended, so if you go and look at the vaccine recommendation lists that the United States recommends that somebody be vaccinated for before they leave the country, they have certain places that are like, okay, if you're going here, you should have this one, this one, and this one. For some reason, Grand Rapids, Michigan is on that list. Yeah, as being one of the ones that you should have basically all your vaccinations up to date. There are certain countries that are like, if you come here, you should have like your hepatitis A. That's about it. But like, and then certain other countries, we would refer to them as third world countries, that they're like, you have to have everything. For some reason, Grand Rapids is on that everything list. And yeah, anyway. Okay, so history of Michigan. The French first explored the region and laid claim to it in 1668. And yes, I'm only going back as far as like the kind of what led up to the United States, and how, you know, obviously there was Native American influences in the area, and maybe I'll go back through and talk about that. But I kind of feel that that's another video. It's going to be a lot more in depth to talk about the tribal history and things, which tribes laid claim to the area, the conflicts and whatnot. So I'm just focusing on kind of early colonial era up to present day. So, and that covers, you know, I could delve into just 1 year and probably have more information than I need, but okay, so the French explorers arrived first, and they started some fur trading posts. And interestingly enough, they were very cooperative with the Native American tribes in the area. They were, you know, it could be that if the French had maintained control over Michigan, there would have been, you know, good relations. We don't know, but we do know kind of the white colonizers came in, typically pushed the Native Americans out. That may have been the case in this area if France had maintained control. Who knows? But anyway, the British came along in 1763, and at the end of the French and Indian War, they took over the territory from the French. So then we have the American Revolution, and the United States took over in 1778, and it was part of the became part of the United States under the Northwest Ordinance of that same year. And then in 1837, hoping that I put that, yeah, 1837. I just wanted to make sure that they were the same on both slides. Usually I double check that, but anyway, the state Michigan was at that point organized into a state in 1837. So there was a lot of growth and economic development in Michigan at that time. It was focused on the fur trade, industry, mining operations, and so it became I don't want to say the word that's popping into my head. I want to say that at that point in time, that's what the industry focused on. Detroit was founded by the French in 1701. So it's one of the older cities in the United States. Been around since before the founding of the United States. But Detroit became kind of an industrial center at the time. So during the Civil War, let's move to the Civil War before I go too much further into the automotive and stuff. But Civil War, they provided a lot of troops and supplies. But they weren't necessarily impacted directly by any of the battles because they were so far north of where basically the divide between the northern and the southern states were. So it was impacted, yes, in the loss of men and it providing a lot of supplies, but at the same time, no battlefields, nothing like that in Michigan. And yes, it was a northern state, so at that point in history, slavery had been abolished in Michigan, as far as I know. So anyway. Then we have the industrialization that came along after the Civil War, and Detroit became known as Motor City. Henry Ford, who was a Michigan native, started the Ford car company, and so another one of the reasons why this became a center for commercially producing automobiles at this point in time was that they also were doing steel production, and so they wanted to be close to the plants that were producing the steel that they were using in the cars. So it made sense to locate those together in the Detroit area. So after that, Great Depression comes along, and there was a lot that Michigan had to do. They had high unemployment rates, and there was a lot of economic difficulty at that point in time. So it was in a slump. And afterwards, you had the recovery from the Second World War because they were able to convert a lot of what they did at the time to producing material for the war. So they went from producing cars to producing jeeps and tanks and planes and all that stuff for the war effort. And then the auto industry has, fluctuated quite a bit. So Michigan, it's still a center for automotive production and things, but they've had to branch out as different car companies have come in to compete from around the world. And so now they're doing aerospace, they're doing information technology, and we'll talk about that more in a later slide, at a later part. The geography of Michigan, it's in the Great Lakes region, as I showed you in that previous with the map. And it's kind of interesting. Michigan, if you remember looking at that map, is divided in two. They have the Upper Peninsula and the Lower Peninsula, and I'm trying to think if you would. It's interesting because technically as I recall, they're not entirely surrounded by water, except in the man-made sense, because they've dug canals between the Great Lakes, so that shipping and whatever else. But Michigan was surrounded by the Great Lakes, but not the tip. It's not typical of what you would think of as a peninsula, like Italy or Baja California or Florida, for instance. Those are surrounded by the Mediterranean, the Pacific and the Atlantic Oceans. So a lot more water, and these are, anyway. So we have the Upper Peninsula and the Lower Peninsula. And the Upper Peninsula is a lot more rugged. It's a lot less developed. It has Lake Superior and Lake Michigan around it, and Lake Huron. Lake Superior, Lake Michigan, Lake Huron. Lots of forests, and Porcupine and the Huron Mountains are in those areas. Less populated than the Lower Peninsula. So the Lower Peninsula, that's where Detroit is. It's surrounded by Michigan, Lake Michigan, Huron, and Erie, and then it's connected to Indiana and Ohio on the land side. Now, they do have a bridge that stretches between the Upper and the Lower Peninsula. It goes across the Straits of Mackinac. Lower Peninsula has the farmlands. It has 3,000 miles of worth of coastland, which is for roughly 4,800 kilometers. And we'll talk about that a little. There's some other stuff that goes along with that, like Sleeping Bear Dunes National Lakeshore and Pictured Rocks National Lakeshore. So there's a lot going on in the Lower Peninsula. That's where the major cities are, like Detroit, Grand Rapids, Lansing, and Ann Arbor. They're all in that area. So the climate is divided as well, because we have the Upper Peninsula and Lower Peninsula. So the Lower Peninsula is classified as a humid continental. The temperatures in the summer are the mid-70s, which is the mid-20 Celsius, to the mid-80s, around 30. Winters being the low 20s, which is -5 Celsius, to the mid-30s, which is around 1 degree Celsius. Snowfall is very common in Michigan, and being right near the Great Lakes doesn't really help that. What it's called is the lake effect. So you have the clouds that come in, and they may be there to dump rain or snow or whatever on the state, but as they pass across the lake, they're picking up more moisture. And so when it does rain, they end up getting more moisture, more precipitation than they would have if those lakes had not been there. So anyway, then you have the Upper Peninsula, which is a humid continental / humid subarctic. Yeah, it's quite a ways from the Arctic. I would have thought Canada, but anyway, they classified as subarctic, and this is where they get a lot more of the the lower temperatures. So summers 60 to 70 degrees, so 15 to 25 degrees Celsius, with the winters around the low 20s with -10 to -5, and they usually receive more snowfall because of like I said, because of that lake effect. They get around 30 to 40 inches of rain during the year, which is 760 to 1,020 millimeters, and they do have a lot of sudden changes in temperature and precipitation because of those lakes. Let's move on. Okay, so we have industry in Michigan. The industry there in Michigan: automotive, manufacturing, healthcare, life sciences, information technology, agriculture, and tourism. Those are the ones that are the big. Some of the big industries in the area: General Motors, Ford Motor Company are located there. Fiat Chrysler is now there. I shouldn't say is now there. It was Chrysler, now it's Fiat Chrysler, and it's apparently part of Stellantis. But yeah, Dow Chemicals, Whirlpool Corporation, they make a lot of home appliances. Dow is the chemical one, not Whirlpool. Whirlpool is the products. We have the Kellogg's Company. They are based in Battle Creek, Michigan, have been since forever. If you're unfamiliar, Kellogg's is a major cereal manufacturer. Steelcase Inc., Lear Corporation, those just some of the ones that are there. As far as tourism goes, we're kind of going to jump ahead. Let's see. Okay, so there's a lot of outdoor recreation in Michigan. It's famous for outdoor recreation, being right there on the Great Lakes. There's a lot of fishing, boating, hiking, camping, you name it. If you're going out to the Great Lakes, you have Lake Superior, Lake Michigan, Lake Huron, Lake Erie. Those are all right there, bordering Michigan. You have the Mackinac Island, as I said before, the Sleeping Bear Dunes National Lakeshore, the Pictured Rocks National Lakeshore. There's tons of stuff there. Then we get into the more populated areas, and we have Detroit, which is home to all those car manufacturers, so there's a lot around the car culture that's there as well. We've got the Detroit Institute of the Arts, the Henry Ford Museum, the Motown Museum, so if you're interested in Motown music, Motown Museum. There's also sports. There's Comerica Park and Ford Field. I'm trying to remember. The Detroit Lions and the Detroit Tigers are two of the sports teams that are located there in Michigan. And if you're interested in winter sports, they also have a lot of that because they get a lot of snow during the winter. So if you're doing cross-country skiing, you snowmobiling, downhill skiing, also called alpine skiing. There's ski resorts like Boyne Mountain and Crystal Mountain. Let's see. Henry Ford, as I mentioned before, the Henry Ford Museum, their Detroit Institute of Arts. There's tons to do there. There's even a cherry festival. So in Traverse City, they have the annual National Cherry Festival to celebrate their cherry harvest. So, yeah. Featured parades, concerts, cherry-themed events, fireworks, cherry-based everything at that point in time. I got to wrap this up because I got to get going on to something else. But we're now to my favorite part, as always. Michigan is the state with the most lighthouses out of any other state in the United States. It has the most lighthouses. It also boasts the only floating post office. It's the J.W. Westcott II. It's a boat, and it's the only floating post office in the United States. It delivers mail to ships going down through the Detroit River. Yeah. The world's largest cherry pie was created in 1987 in Traverse City, Michigan, and it set a Guinness World Record. It weighed 28,000 pounds and used 17 tons of cherries. So I don't know. Wow, that's just way too much. Battle Creek, Michigan, the cereal capital of the world. As I mentioned before, it's where Kellogg's and Post cereals come from. We have Motown. If you're interested in that, originated in the 1960s, and Motown Records was founded by Berry Gordy Jr., and he produced records for Stevie Wonder, The Supremes, Marvin Gaye, all that kind of stuff. We have the Mackinac Bridge. It connects the upper and lower peninsulas of Michigan. It's one of the longest suspension bridges in the world. It spans 5 miles. So yeah. And then we have the Paulding Light. It's this light phenomenon near Paulding, Michigan. It moves around. It's an orb of light. Nobody knows what it is or where it comes from. So yeah. Hell, Michigan. I don't know if I need to say more about that. They have a town in Michigan called Hell, and it just leans right into it. Apparently, you can get officially damned at the Hell Post Office. There's the Hell Hole Diner and Screams Ice Cream. So if you're interested in that. Wyandotte, Michigan has the world's largest stove. They call it the Great Lakes Guardian as well. Yeah, 25 feet tall. Ended up having to take a little break. Now I'm back. So anyway, we were just talking about the world's largest stove. So now we're going to be moving on. Let's see, where was I? We were talking about the stove. I need to talk about the Michigan Dogman. Yeah. So it's a mythical creature that lives in the woods in Michigan. Werewolf-like creature. Anyway, yeah, they got the Dogman. They also have the Nain Rouge, and I know I butchered that. Rouge, yes. Nain, I'm not sure. Anyway, it means the red dwarf. Let's see, where did it go? Yeah. So another folklore from Michigan. Red dwarf-like creature. Apparently, it's like seeing a banshee. Doom, misfortune, and they have the Marche du Nain Rouge. No, I butchered that. Sorry about that. Apparently, they dress up and celebrate the resiliency of the city, and that's something they do in Detroit. In Michigan, it is illegal to keep an alligator in your bathtub. It is a weird law, and it makes you go, what? But I would bet that there's a story behind it. Somebody was in Michigan keeping alligators in bathtubs, and somebody's like, there ought to be a law. And somebody else is like, you know what? You're right. I'm going to make it. Who knew? I mean, and there's a prohibition against whale hunting in Michigan, which when I was reading about this, it's like Michigan is landlocked. Michigan technically isn't landlocked. It is surrounded on like 3 sides by water. It's just surrounded by fresh water. There are no whales anywhere near Michigan. So why they feel they need to have a prohibition in Michigan against whale hunting, I don't know. Makes no sense to me. Anyway, it is illegal to go cow tipping. I am from a semi-rural area, and so I've always heard people talk about going cow tipping. I've never seen anybody do it. I've never actually met someone who has actually done it. But supposedly, you go and you hit the cow, you sneak up on the cow and hit them hard enough that you tip them over. And like body check kind of thing, or, you're in hockey and you're skating around and you slam into somebody, or football. I don't know. Cows are really, really big animals. And so if you could actually hit a cow hard enough to knock it over, that's pretty impressive. But apparently in Michigan, you cannot do that. It is illegal. And then we have the no dancing law in Michigan. It's not no dancing ever. It's no dancing in public in some cities. So you can dance in public in those cities, but you have to get a permit first. So as long as you have that permit, you're good. You're golden. But if you don't, nope. Thing is, they don't actually do anything about this. It's one of those laws that gets passed, gets put on the books, and never taken off. There you go. So anyway, that's it for Michigan. Let me know what you thought. Let me know if you've been to Michigan. Let me know if you are from Michigan, and if I got something wrong, please let me know. We're going to be talking about, let's see, one of the Dakota, probably North Carolina next, if I remember right. I think Michigan is the last of the... No, we've got Missouri. Sorry, I misspoke. Missouri is next on our list. And then we'll be... So next, look forward to Missouri. and like, subscribe, put the bell on so you get notifications, all that other stuff. And see you next time.